welcome to Demonstration 5. Today I will be painting on 140-pound Stonehenge paper. It's a 100% cotton rag with a relatively smooth surface, and it was introduced in the early 70s for the printmaking industry, but artists soon discovered it and they began using it. Colored pencil artists really like this paper, and it's good for watercolor as well. In this block, there are 15 sheets, and they're glued on two sides. Occasionally, when I have to have a very wet painting, I need to put a little bit of tape. I've done that here. I need to put a little bit of tape on there to hold these two sides down because they're not glued down. Now today, I'm going to finish this painting of a Nuns Orchid, and I've left one flower undone because these are basically the same method. And we're going to finish the background, and I'm going to do a couple of the leaflets that are on the flower spike. This is the original one that I did, and this is on 140-pound Arches paper. And you can see they're pretty much very similar. I'm getting similar results. This one is a little bit less white. The Stonehenge is a nice bright white. And I will point out as we go along some of the differences between the Stonehenge and the Arches that I've found. But basically, it's a great surface to work on, so that gives you some more options. The palette that we're going to use today for the Nuns Orchid is American Journey, Sap Green, Daniel Smith, Permanent Alizarin Crimson, Holbein, Burnt Sienna, Gamboge Nova, Horizon Blue, Lilac, and Payne's Gray, and Winsor & Newton, Permanent Magenta, Ultramarine Violet, and possibly white gouache, not sure yet, we'll see. I would like to take just a minute to give you some information about the Nuns Orchid. Another common name is the swamp orchid, and the botanical name is Phaeus tankervillii. Now, the first specimens were introduced from China to England in 1788, and there was a botanist, well known, named the orchid after the wife of a British earl, and her name was Lady Emma Tankerville. That's where the botanical name comes from. She was a botanical art patron and a collector of exotic plants. The first tropical orchid to flower in England was a Nuns Orchid, and it was in her greenhouse. She had 8 children, and one of her daughters became a well-known watercolor artist. And some of Lady Tankerville's botanical painting collection is housed today at the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew in England. All right, we will begin with the petals on this last flower. And I've tried to mix up sort of an orangey brick red. I've used Indian red before, and I was out of it at the time, so I took a mix of alizarin crimson and burnt sienna. This was from the first set of mixtures that I did the other day, and this is what I just mixed up. So I think I'm fairly close on that. Sometimes when you stop and come back and have to remix paint a few days later, it's hard to get the exact mixture that you wanted, but I think I've got it pretty close, so that's good. You can wet the surface if you want to, or you don't have to. Either way. I think I will this time. May have to dilute that a little bit. It's pretty strong. Again, in this painting, some of the petals have sort of translucent edges, so I'm going to leave them a little bit white on the very edge. This is just the first layer. I think I'll end up putting about 3 layers on here. I'll do one without wetting it. I'm just going to put my hand on there. Yeah, it just makes it a little bit easier to spread if it's wet. I got a little smudge right there. One thing I've noticed with the Stonehenge paper, if you want to work and rework and lift in a certain area, maybe you made a mistake and you wanted to correct it, you need to be careful because it's not quite as durable. There will be some pieces that start to flake up, and so you just need to be careful with that. Let those dry a few minutes, come down, I'll do a couple of these leaves. Nothing to these really, just a very light wash of sap green. I put a little bit of highlight of yellow on these leaves here, so we'll just do a little bit of sap green, very light. I fiddle with that a little bit so that you can see possibly there's a little bit of paper coming up right there. But when it dries, it usually looks okay. Let those dry. I'll go ahead and work on the background. Just a minute to mix that up. This little weird little brush right here is usually my mixing brush. Still got some red in it. Mix up plenty of the horizon blue. Very beautiful color, I love it. Holbein horizon blue. I'm definitely going to wet this first. The only problem I may have, there may be a little bit of a line here, we'll see, because I did that the other day and it's dry. Get it good and wet. Go beyond where you plan to go. Like I always do, I go beyond a little bit with the water. That way it helps eliminate the lines that you get sometimes when it dries. Get that to fade just a little bit. Went over a little bit right there. Hand's a little shaky today. Notice I'm wetting it all the way to the edge of the page, but I don't really want the paint to go all the way out there. I want it to sort of fade out. Just let it do its thing. Getting into these tight spaces here now. If I have to, I'll go to a smaller brush. I'm very close to the edge here, so I'm going to do something I don't normally do and stop with this background paint, and I'll finish it in a few minutes because I think I can go ahead and do some more on this one. I think these are dry enough. So I'm just going to stop on this side and go back and do some work on here. Yeah, I did get a little bit of a problem here, but not bad, because I didn't do the background all at the same time. I got a little bit of indication here, and you can fix that. If it bothered you. But that's what watercolor is about. A little bit of imperfections here and there, no problem. Now the next thing I will do is try to do a little bit of this outer ring here. You can see it's sort of a pinkish red, and mine is not exactly true to the flower, but I just wanted to do it. I used a little bit of this lilac mixed with the permanent magenta. That'll be the first layer. Then I'm going to have to come over and do a little bit of red, sort of fade the red in there, the alizarin crimson in there. It is a little tricky to get it just the way you want it on these flowers. This one came out really well. This one I really had to work on for a while to make it look right. So you may have to end up doing that if you do try this painting. I'll mix up a little bit of lilac and permanent magenta. I'll probably need to go to a smaller brush here, and I will need to turn this paper a little bit. I'm just going to cover the whole area and then probably do some lifting later because there are some lighter areas there. While that's drying, I am going to do another layer on the petals. I'll go with a little bit darker color on the petals of this red sienna color. This petal here is very dark in some spots. This one is pretty light. This one has some dark to it. You could even put a little yellow on the top if you wanted to make it a little lighter. On the top, a little glaze of yellow. It's kind of deceiving. This petal right here is actually going to this flower. So that one's done. This one is pretty dark here. That one. This one's pretty light. It's got a little bit of a dark patch here. Alright, that's the next layer. I may go ahead and do just a little bit on this one right here. On the original photo, this petal was behind this petal of this flower, and I changed the composition because I wanted this one to be sort of the focal point. So you can do that. You can change the composition just a little bit. All right. Now I'm going to mix up some very dark permanent magenta and a little bit of Payne's gray to get that deep throat color. Just make a ring around there. Need to have a brush that's pretty accurate, so I'm going to go with a small angular shader. Get some water on there quickly. It's the best way for me to do it. I don't know anybody else that uses an eyedropper, but I like to do that just to get things going quickly. Now put some Payne's Gray and some permanent magenta, making a nice dark color. I need to make it really dark. You don't need much of the Payne's Gray. Look how nice and dark that is. All right, I'll try that. I'm just being very careful going around this little middle section here. That could even be a little darker. You just load up some more paint on there if you want. Let it dry. I did put a little shadowing in the middle there the other day with some Payne's Gray, or it could have been Ultramarine Violet. Either one is fine. Later I'll try to kind of fade that and blend it together when it dries with a little bit of red maybe. Just leave it like that for now. I'm going to let that dry and just drop down and do a little more on these two leaflets here. Not much to be done. I decided to use a little Ultramarine Violet to sort of finish a few areas here. If you look on the photo, there is a little bit of a purple hint there. So I'm just going to use some Ultramarine Violet, go right over the green. Pretty light. Let's see how it works. Kind of dark. Might let it dry. It'll dry lighter. The green will give it sort of a grayish appearance. That's okay. You can still see it's a little bit of just a slight purple. Try to fade the hard edge. I'll lighten that just a little bit. Ooh, that looks perfect. And you'll notice on some of these other areas I did already put some shadowing, and I just used the Ultramarine Violet for that. There may be a couple other spots that I missed, but no big deal. I think I got most of them. There is one little spot here I'm going to put the Horizon Blue in that I missed the other day. Now I have to let this dry before I can do any more, and this is still pretty wet. So I'll come back in just a couple minutes to finish that off. I'm going to try to put another layer of sort of a red color, maybe a magenta red color around this throat area. So let's see how that works. I'm going to try to fade and blend these two areas. It's pretty tricky. Let's try this color first. I'm just going to cover this whole area. Then later, if I want a more lilac color on the edge, I can come over and do another layer of lilac. While it's wet, I may try to do a layer of red right along the edge here, and you'll see it will sort of expand out a little bit. really would like to soften this edge a little bit. I might try something like this. Let's see if that will work. Put a little more of that really dark color out while it's wet. See if it'll fade out a little bit. Every time you do it differently. So don't worry about it. Just experiment with it. That's what this is all about, trying to practice and experiment and learn. Now I can try to expand out this red maybe just a little bit with a damp brush, not too wet. It looks pretty good. I think I'll let that dry a little bit. Drop down here real quick and just do some final little embellishments on these two leaflets. Need a nice thin brush, a round brush with a little bit of sap green on it. You can do it with Ultramarine Violet too if you want. I think I did that on the first painting. Some very thin lines. They'll dry a little bit lighter. I went ahead and finished this little area here. Same method as I did right here. Now, while this is drying, I want to show you one other little thing that I did to the throats. And that is to use a razor blade. And I'm going to do a little scraping in the throat area. You could use the white gouache. That's why I said it was optional in the beginning. You could use white gouache if you want to. I could do one with the gouache and one with the scraping if you wanted to see what it's like. I just try to put the gouache on nice and thick because that way you will get an effect. You may not get much of an effect. I put a little bit of white gouache in this area right here and right here just to highlight a little bit. That's another option you could do on this one, is to use the white gouache right in these little areas to lighten it up a little bit. So I'll try to do a little scraping with the razor blade. You can use a knife or sandpaper, but sandpaper, I want to have a more of a sparkly look, so I'm going to use a razor blade this time. You just scrape, and it needs to be done when it's dry. It's best when it's dry. So I may not do this one today, I'll just do these two. See how it has kind of a sparkly effect in the throat. I like that. Now this one, I'll just do some right in here. Pretty cool. I like that. You just need to brush that off. I wouldn't mess with it until you're really done with the area and it's good and dry. But I do like using that effect. I know one other thing I can do while this is drying. One more layer on the petals. And it's going to be permanent magenta. Let's see if I can find some permanent magenta that's not mixed with other colors. Just a little more embellishment on these. Like a third layer. If you don't like it, you can lift it. This one is just pretty light. I have to turn it. Okay. Now, if I ended up having this too dark, I could go back and I could put some more on these other flowers, try to match them all up. Since I've done it at two different times, it's sort of hard to match it up exactly. Now the next thing, I think I will try to lighten this area along the edge, and I'm going to put a few little marks here to try to make it look like these. You can see, make it look like it's not flat. First, I want to lighten it up a little bit. I'm going to put some lilac on the edges. Have to soften that edge. Try a wider brush. Kind of blend it. You see, you can do a lot if you don't like the way it's coming out. I tell you, I did a lot of reworking on this flower right here. I've done this painting several times and it always gives me fits, that one flower on the bottom. Now there is a very light area, I would say right here, so I'm going to do some lifting. Here's where you can start lifting off some. Okay, let's do some more lifting here in a couple of spots. Some of those edges are real light. They're a little bit too light, so I'm going to put a little red on those just to see. See, that's flaking up a little bit. I haven't worked on it much, but the paper's flaking just a little bit. Just keep playing around with it. You know, you get the idea. You can fiddle with it. That's a little bit crazy looking. A little bit too much red. Just kind of lift it a little bit. Get the idea. You can develop different methods of doing things. Alright, let's stop there. I think I got everything done. I'm not going to use the razor blade right now, but if I was, there's a thin line along here. I could try it. It's probably not dry enough. Yeah, it's good enough. Okay. I think I'll stop fiddling with it. I would probably keep working on this part a little bit more. A little bit light right there. So I think that's it. I think I'm done. I just did one more thing to the painting, and I did use a little bit of white gouache in this area right here. Just for fun, just to see how it went. This is the last painting featured in the Orchid series. In the 5 demonstrations of this series, I tried some different painting surfaces and specialty paints, including hot press paper, Waterford Saunders paper from England, some affordable watercolor canvas panels, black Stonehenge and white Stonehenge 140-pound paper, as well as some fun, fine-tech pearlescent watercolor paint. It's been interesting to compare the advantages and disadvantages of each of these painting surfaces. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe to this channel for notification of new shows. Don't forget, if you want to practice any of these paintings, just go to the Facebook page, Paint Your Garden in Watercolor, and download any images you want to use for practice. I hope that this has been helpful for you if you are in the process of learning and practicing watercolor painting. I really love this medium, and my aim is to help you get started to be successful so that you can create some of your own beautiful paintings. So good luck, keep on practicing, and I'll see you next time.